空を越えてラララ星の彼方行くぞアトムジェットの限り心優しいラララ科学の子みんなパリピだ鉄腕アトム
Hello, and welcome back to the journey through the works of Osamu Tezuka. Last time around, we went through the latter half of the 50s, and we saw Tezuka dip his toe into works for older audiences. There was certainly some interesting manga here and there. Now, we won't see him fully delve into adult manga this time either, but as we go through the early 60s, Tezuka will experiment with something else. Animation. Yes, it's time to finally have some anime on the docket. Once again, there's a lot to go through, and you probably know the deal by now. But I'm not done with the intro quite yet. I have a special segment to add, an addendum not in terms of Tezuka's works, but to my sources. While looking up info for more obscure Tezuka works in this video, I happened upon a certain Japanese YouTube channel, Inko Hakusei no Tezuka Osamu Fuin Manga Kosatsu, or Dr. Inko's Study of Sealed Manga by Osamu Tezuka. To explain, there are several Tezuka works that just don't get reprinted for one reason or another, or in some cases they do, but in expensive special books. Normally, I'd have to just find what info I can about them online and move on, but this person has created videos going through them and explaining what they're about. This is a valuable resource to me, and let it never be said I don't give due credit. I don't know if they'll ever see this or the comment I left on one of their videos, but let's all give Dr. Inko a quick little thanks. Furthermore, I'd also like to give a quick general thanks to the people on Twitter and Blue Sky, who either on purpose or by accident lead me to learning more about even more Tezuka stuff. There's always more to discover, and I mean that. There were literally new unpublished manuscripts just found between the making of the last part and this one. Without some mentions of certain things online, I may have ended up just missing some of them. It makes me feel like at the end of this whole thing I'll need to put together a special thanks section or something. The point is, there's only so much I can do by myself, but with a helpful community, we can make these videos just a bit better and a bit more informative. Every little bit helps. And so, I thank you. Now that the disclaimers are out of the way, following the trend of the last video, I've gotten some other material that allows me to look at works I didn't have before. This time around, the book is Hana to Arakure Tezuka Osamu Gekiga Sakushinshu, or Flowers and Ruffians, a collection of Tezuka Osamu's Gekiga works. While I find their definition of Gekiga a bit odd considering the contents, I do enjoy this connecting to the last video's endpoint of Flowers and Ruffians. I didn't intend that, but it's a nice coincidence. At any rate, this mostly contains stuff I already have, save now some colored versions of it, but it also contains some of those written short stories I couldn't read. So, let's go through them the best I can. Once again, no comment on if they're actually well written, just the overall summary. Okay then, first, let's look at Hagaki no Kaidan, or postcard ghost stories. One day, a guy gets a postcard in the mail. It has no sender, and just the message, died October 23rd. He throws it away, and the next day, he gets another. And then another. And then another, sent from all over Japan. Then, the fated day arrives, and he's gotten so tired of destroying all the postcards. As hundreds of them fill his room, a radio, I think, gives a message. The readers' contest asking when some person died had a mistake, and everyone sent their quiz answers to the wrong address. Overall, a fun little gag story. Next, we have Kaiki Jitsuwa Sugata Naki Kaichiken, or Strange True Story The Invisible Mystery. It opens on a guy named something like McRavel or McCravel. However you say it, he gets into his car one day and a bullet flies through his window. He calls up a guy named Johnny, who he assumes is the one behind this, only for Johnny to accuse him of the same thing. They both wonder who could be behind this, and over a few days, this happens to hundreds of windows. Whatever is going on, it moves, first across American states, and then to Toronto, Canada. It looks like the truth of the matter might be a weird quirk of safety glass, but then it turns out to be about weird dust? I don't know if this is just not written the best or if the translator is having trouble, but apparently space dust is being carried by the wind, hitting people's windows and causing some reaction that breaks glass? I can't say I fully get it, but let's just be happy that Canada got acknowledged and move on. Nihon Ichi no Obaki Yoshiki, Japan's most haunted house, is a bit of an issue. So I got the book with these stories in it, and as someone who can't read Japanese, I'm translating them through my phone. It's not the best, but usually I can get the gist of what they're about. But this one's just not really working. Where the others would give me odd but still understandable results, half the time Haunted House here just gives me random nonsense. I can tell you Tezuka seems to say it's based on a true story, but I don't know if it's a well-known one. It starts with people eating dinner in an old house when rocks start being thrown by a mysterious source. After that, there's something about a governor, and the story ends with something burning, and I think that solves the haunting? I tried to translate this a few times, but it's just not working well. Rounding out the 50s works is Tokusatsu Monogatari, Poisoning Story. I was a little unsure last video of what this actually was, but now I can clear it up to the best of my ability. It does in fact start with the sort of prologue from Tezuka about poisons in media and history. It goes on for a few pages, and after that, we're introduced to Rayleigh and his brother Aldo, two ranch workers. Aldo is described as a scumbag, and he plans to kill Rayleigh to inherit all of his stuff. He borrows Rayleigh's pistol with some story about showing it off to a friend, waits in the night, and sees Rayleigh drop dead. He was already planning to make it look like a suicide, so that wasn't much of a problem, but just as he was wondering what happened, he dies himself. A narrator comes in and reveals, if I'm reading this right, Rayleigh poisoned the gun somehow, and somehow this killed both of them through contact. I'm not too sure on the specifics, but that's what it appears to say. Alright then, that covers the short stories from the late 50s. Not the best commentary, but it's something. On to the actual manga from the 1960s. What started us off proper this time? Taking us into the 60s, we'll begin with Ore ha Sarutobida, or I Am Sarutobi, a manga of action, comedy, ninjas, and the occasional fourth wall break. The story starts around the death of Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a prominent Japanese historical figure. Samurai factions are vying for power, including Hideyoshi's son, Hideyori. This is all background though. Our focus is on Sarutobi Sasuke, a ninja, or as this manga will present him, a wizard. He, alongside his female companion Osai, have been going to ninja school, which basically acts like magic powers in this manga. A ninja can do anything they want. Realism is off the table. The two of them live in their peaceful little farming village, but one day it gets destroyed by samurai. Sasuke's parents are killed, and his dying dad even comments on how dark this is for an opening. While Sasuke learns to hate samurai, he actually ends up saving one when he falls in an assassination attempt by his ninja senior, Ishikawa Goemon. Sasuke endears himself to the retainers of Toyotomi Hideyori, specifically one Sanada Daisuke, and the series follows Daisuke trying to convince Sasuke to use his magic powers for good, fight off rival samurai groups, and fend off the schemes of Goemon. If you're a Japanese history buff, a bunch of these names may be familiar to you. Sarutobi Sasuke is of course a famous ninja, though this portrayal probably isn't the most accurate. In Goemon's case, he was a notorious thief instead of a ninja, much like a Japanese Robin Hood. But here, he's greedy and has a visual gag of him being boiled, which is how he'd be executed in real life. There's probably a whole bunch of names I just don't recognize, but you get the idea. Tezuka put in a lot of historical nods. He also added a lot of jokes. From me describing the ninja powers as magic, I hope you concluded that this series could be a little silly. Despite the fourth wall breaking telling you how dark the beginning is when Sasuke's dad dies, this is a pretty lighthearted affair. We even have Lamp playing a good guy, a role so odd for the actor that he breaks the fourth wall to comment on it. Instead of a serious story, the manga is clearly made to be a fun read for kids. Having said that, I Am Sarutobi does have some more grounded moments of characters talking about their feelings, mainly between Sasuke and Osai. They have a bit of a sweet relationship. I think this manga is fine if you're looking for some fun magic ninja fights. If you want some deep character and story moments, you may find one or two that work, but I wouldn't overly recommend it for that. Still, a decent start to the decade, and now we go from a silly boys action series to a more dramatic and emotional girls one. Next is Angel no Oka, or Angel Hill. This one's a bit more serious because it starts off with an execution. The person being put to death is Princess Luna. Having broken some rule of Angel Island, she's sent away in a giant shell by the ruler of the island, Pyoma. I guess it's assumed that this will kill her somehow. Luckily, she's found by a passing ship, but the loss of her memories puts her in a tough spot. The good news is that the ship's crew are all very nice and willing to help. The bad news is that she gets kidnapped and put into slavery. And for some reason, even though she's clearly very pretty, she's put with the undesirable slaves because she can't dance. I'm no slavery expert, but I feel like she'd sell a decent price for her looks. Well, in a way she does, when a man walking by sees her plight and buys her. The reason? Because Luna looks like his sister. Eiji is a ship captain put under a lot of pressure by his wealthy controlling parents. His younger sister Akemi is also subject to this, growing rebellious in frustration. While Luna was hired to be a servant and maybe an intended friend for Akemi, that arrangement won't last long. Pyoma suspected Luna might not have died, because, her method of killing was very luck dependent, and sends kidnappers to bring her back to the island, to sacrifice her. Instead of just sending assassins, Pyoma really sucks at killing people. But if you recall, the rebellious Akemi looks a lot like Luna, and you can guess who gets kidnapped instead. Eiji even works as the ship captain, unknowingly transferring her. It's a bad time for both kids to be away too, when their father dies, and Luna takes on the role of Akemi while trying to help their grieving mother. We follow these two stories, Luna in Japan pretending to be someone else while regaining her own memories, and Eiji and Akemi as they journey to Angel Island and discover its mysteries. The setup is a little predictable, but it's good. We have a mysterious island, an exiled princess, some family drama, and a touch of romance. Angel Hill also gives us some good leads with different defined personalities. We jump between essentially 3 protagonists and they all feel engaging enough. Overall, the plot and characters are mostly pretty good. Why only mostly? Pyoma isn't a great villain. She initially seems pretty decent, but then you notice she's a little incompetent. Her ending motivation is also a bit weak, but one weak link aside, the rest of the cast are decent, leaving Angel Hill as a solid read. I also love this gag of Eiji and Akemi's mom trying to be a great artist by constantly drawing Hyotensughi. It's just a funny bit. But moving on, we get to our first short manga of the video, and prepare yourself because there's going to be a few. Kasei Monogatari, or Mars Story, is a little 2-page manga about astronauts going to Mars. They arrive and worry about the Martians being scary and putting up a fight, but when they find them, it turns out the Martians are poor. They're remaining survivors of the destroyed civilization. The astronauts then decide to just leave them alone and go home, and the reader learns that it's all a lie. The Martians pretend they were destroyed so people don't bother them. I thought it was a good punchline. Next is Himitsu Shirei Dai Sango, Secret Order No. 3. A train pulls into a station and Emmett is pushed onto the tracks and killed. He was the leader of the Inoka group, there to meet his son, Kenta. Kenta deals with the bad news, while the son of the rival Starry Summer group, Hirochi, gets off as well. The Inokas are building an underground tunnel that could jeopardize the Starry Summer's transporting business, so the two factions are really at odds with each other. But it turns out the murder actually wasn't fully intentioned by the Sarisawa group, and so they decide to move on to Secret Order No. 3, their plan to destroy the tunnel, and we'll follow Kenta and Ryochi as they deal with the conflict. An alright setup with an alright plot, pretty standard overall, not too much to say beyond the premise. Boken Hosokyoku, Adventure Broadcast Club, is a little bit stranger. Brother and sister Minoru and Marimo are orphans. They live in their little hut together, but some guys break in and kidnap Marimo. Minoru chases after them, is met by a talking dogman named Goro, and is taken to the secret lab of a scientist. The dogman and scientist are the ones who kidnap Marimo, but are actually friendly. The scientist has invented a device that does stuff, but thinks adults are corrupt, so he only wants children to use it. So he just found some kids and brought them here. What does the device do? It's honestly not really clear to me. It's described as materializing dreams, and in some instances it affects the real world, like allowing Minoru to grow up and fight real thugs. But in other instances, it looks like it's making fake worlds for them to experience like virtual reality. So I guess it just does whatever it wants? Or maybe I'm just too stupid to understand. At any rate, the children are happy with their new toy, and together with Goro the Dogman, they'll go on some adventures, like fighting bug people or a criminal group of invisible guys. Very much another Tezuka sci-fi adventure series for young boys, Adventure Broadcast Club has a lot of room to do whatever it wants, but doesn't come across as overly interesting to me. The setting can be anything, but the characters are one note. They just aren't compelling to me. I'm not even entirely sure if there are real stakes of them getting hurt because of how ill-defined the machine is. It's imaginative, sure, but I just don't feel engaged with it. But this is me criticizing the work for children, so take my comments lightly. On a related note, time for a cute animals Tezuka work, with Rabbit-chan, or Little Rabby, the story of a little rabbit named Rabby, living in the woods with their rabbit family. It's cute, it's comedic, it's got a bunch of cute animals for the kids to look at. Nothing much to say, but it has its own particular charm. Another one for the children that I feel out of my element really talking about. Kankyaku ga Ippai, filled with customers on the other hand, is a more relatable mature comedy. It's a 4-page sketch of a theater from the perspective of the movie screen. It constantly watches people and comes up with little narratives based on their theater behavior. It's quite short, but maybe a one-shot about the life and thoughts of a screen could be interesting with the right writer. Another short gives us Dara ga Kakuteru, Someone is Crazy. It's a pretty classic scenario. A bunch of guys are on a rocket ship heading to blow up a dangerous meteor when Earth radios in. One of them has been accidentally injected with a poison that'll drive them crazy and jeopardize the mission. Paranoia grasps the crew, and you can guess how it all goes. A story replicated many times at this point, though maybe it was a bit more original back then. Either way, not the best version of the premise, but a fine manga short. Keeping the trend going is Hinotani, Valley of Fire. A young man walks into town, suspicious about a dead body he found along the way. The body was shot in the back and had their gun stolen, a clear sign of a murder as opposed to a duel of some kind. There's also a lot of rumors about a legendary pistol said to make one an unbeatable gunslinger, the Devil Jostly. I have no idea what a Jostly is, but that's the name I'm getting when I translate it. We've got another Tezuka western, this time centered around an evil gun that many would kill to have. The story's alright, but maybe a bit too short? I'd say you could use a few more pages. All in all though, it's decent. But I feel like we need something bigger to talk about. We need something a bit more interesting, something notable to spice up the video instead of some average but otherwise unremarkable stuff. This is the 60s, surely we can get a bit more exciting than this. But specifically, this is August of 1960. And you know what? In this retrospective series about the god of anime and manga, we're finally getting an anime. And the fun part is, Tezuka might not have even worked on it. So I know I glossed over it a bit because it's getting its own individual video for later, and likewise this will be talked about more so when that time comes, but do you recall 1952's My Son Goku, Tezuka's adaptation of Journey to the West? Well, this is its anime adaptation in the form of a truncated 90-minute movie, introducing Sayuki, aka Journey to the West, aka Alakazam the Great. This movie seems to be Tezuka's first experience working with animation. As for his actual role, here's what I have. Japanese Wikipedia lists him under directing and composition and has details of him giving feedback on the film's story, but it's a little unclear to me what he actually did. I've also seen it claim that he only really did promotion, but that doesn't line up with other info about him giving story feedback. I'm not sure exactly what you want to label Tezuka in terms of this movie's credits, but at the very least, it looks like he contributed to the initial story drafts. The movie mainly deals with the origins of Son Goku, the formation of the group journeying west, and a big fight against memorable antagonist Bull Demon King. It obviously doesn't work as a full adaptation of the famously lengthy novel, but I found myself quite liking it for what it is. It's a fun watch. There's a good amount to be said about it and adaptational changes it makes, but I'll save those for later to not repeat myself too much. Before a quick fun fact, the design of Bull Demon King in this movie was apparently the inspiration for the original design for Bowser from the Mario franchise. So, there you go. This film partially inspired Tezuka to get animating and helped give us a famous gaming character. More importantly, this means the floodgates are open, and we can look forward to some non-manga to spice up things from here on out. But not too quickly though. Back to short manga. Futari no Ensoka, Two Musicians, is a 5-page piece that takes us back to the war. In a ruined church, a Japanese soldier finds a piano and starts to play. He's found by an American, but instead of fighting, he finds a violin, and the two play together. They agree to meet back here in 20 years to play again after the war ends, and even when both end up scarred by the war, they find a way to keep their promise. A simple but heartfelt story about love of art surpassing war. A very Tezuka theme. And next we have... Okay, let's get this one out of the way. So you may be watching this and be under the impression that the process of making these videos is solely finding the thing, reading the thing, and writing about it. Not a lot of thought in the process. And to be fair, that is the majority of it. But I also take the time to do some simple research and try to validate information I share. If I'm making a claim about something, I try to put the interviewer's source I'm getting that from on screen for everyone to see. But sometimes that's harder than you'd think. I'd like to introduce the manga, Piran-chan, listed as coming out September of 1960. Tezuka wrote the first chapter in collaboration or something with a guy named Hiroshi Fujimoto, one of the guys behind the duel Fujiko Fujio, the creator of Doraemon. Then Fujimoto continued writing it by himself. I have no idea why Tezuka left the project. So it's technically a Tezuka series, but mostly a Fujimoto one. At any rate, a month later, Tezuka would make Piran's Secret, his own version of the manga that greatly expands the storyline. That's a little odd, but surely this isn't that weird. Now there's 2 Piron manga by different guys stemming from a collaboration. But here's the thing. Coming in as our 3rd piece of the puzzle, we have Piron, the live-action TV series, described in articles as being based on the Tezuka manga, and which came out in August of 1960, a month before the earliest manga reportedly came out. I have no idea what's going on here. I am utterly confused about the publication and air dates of these things. I'm seeing these dates given across multiple sites, but then they describe the show as based on the manga, implying it came out after. I even found an old newspaper article talking about the show that looks like it also says it's based on a manga. So I'm led to assume a date somewhere is wrong, but it's being repeated and propagated because someone didn't fact check. I've seen one instance saying the show really started airing in October, which would solve this, but then I found what is claimed to be a TV guide from August 1960 showing the show's listing. But I can't validate that this is for August because the month doesn't seem listed in the image, and I'm not seeing any other sources for the image or other TV guides to confirm it. Surprisingly, people haven't archived every single old TV guide in existence. So now I have unconfirmed evidence it aired before the original manga supposedly came out, and evidence the show was based on the manga. My online sources and the index of the book I'm reading Piron from say the original manga came out in September, and every article I could find about the show say it came out in August. Maybe Tezuka wrote the original Piron manga months ahead, didn't publish it, got a TV adaptation, and then published the first chapter a month later? Something doesn't seem to add up here. I have no idea. I've checked multiple times using auto-translate for a language I can't even read. Let's just pretend it makes sense and talk about what we have. Thankfully, the potential first entry in this mess is also really easy to talk about. Piron no Himitsu, or Piron's Secret, the TV version, looks to be lost media. It was reportedly written by Tezuka and lasted a good amount of episodes, indicating it was at least somewhat liked, but apparently there isn't a single surviving episode anywhere. All we've got are production images. There's not much I can say about a show that no longer exists. See how many times I say that in the future. It will gradually become more and more miraculous that the 1959 Mighty Island series survived the years. But let's move on to the other potential first entry in this thing. Piron-chan, at least to the extent Tezuka wrote, is 4 pages long. It would go on to be much longer, but all I've got are the Tezuka bits. So that's what I'm working with. We open on an older and younger brother camping in the woods. Some aliens lay nearby, greet them, and bond over harmonica. And in 4 pages, that's really all there is. The younger brother's name is Akio, the alien's the titular Piron, and his robot is named Mira. Once again, I'm not seeing a clear reason why Tezuka dropped this. Maybe creative differences with Hiroshi Fujimoto? Well, for whatever reason it was, from that brief setup, let's see where Tezuka actually took this story, with the reboot he made a month later. Piron no Himitsu, Piron's Secret. Akio and his now named brother Tetsuo are camping in the woods, playing a harmonica. They see something in the trees, and upon investigating, discover aliens. Introducing Prince Piron and his robot companion Mira. When their homeworld caster got usurped by the evil Baras, the king and queen sent them to hide on Earth. Naturally, Baras follow them there, and the series revolves around assassins being sent to take care of Piron, while Akio, Tetsuo, and Mira work to protect him. Though, for the most part, Mira is the real powerhouse of the group. Compared to the original manga, Piron's Secret obviously develops the story and characters a lot more. Does this mean it develops them a lot? Well, not exactly. The good guys are good, the bad guys are mostly just evil for evil's sake, and there's not a lot of depth here. While not as made for young kids as the original version was, it still has that feeling. By now we've seen Tezuka do much better, even within this demographic. But before we fully leave Piron, let's cover our bases. I saved myself from really diving into it, but for completion's sake, I also took a glance at the Fujiko Fujio version of the story, Suzume Piron, or Go Piron. Now, if I have this right, this is a separate publication from Piron-chan? They have the same protagonists but were different stories? That seems to be what they're saying online anyways. At any rate, Go Piron follows the alien Piron as the main character, seemingly without human companions like his other works, or even a female robot to help him. Instead, he has a robot dog, named Pippi, and if I may posit a theory, this dog wears a beret, which was a hallmark of Tezuka whenever he drew himself. I wonder if this is an intentional nod. Who knows. At any rate, with this, we've covered our bases on Piron. Maybe one day I'll actually understand which entry came first. Okay then, moving on from that mess, we have something a bit more simple to talk about, and a bit different in content. Nobara yo Itsu Utao, Singing Wild Roses, is a biography manga detailing the life of pianist Clara Schumann. Now, I don't really have much knowledge on this particular historical figure, but the manga covers her father's harsh parenting pushing her mother away, restricting her to becoming a piano prodigy, her befriending Felix Mendelssohn, and it ends with a blossoming relationship with her eventual husband Robert Schumann. At a cursory glance, it looks like this might not be the most historically accurate portrayal, but I'll leave that judgment to someone who actually knows. As for judging the manga, well, we're in a fun spot. We once again have the rare case of Tezuka leaving a manga on a cliffhanger to one day be picked up again, only for that day to never come. On the last page, Tezuka seems to indicate this wasn't supposed to be the end, but Singing Wild Roses leaves us with the formal meeting of Clara and Robert Schumann, and the two falling in love. Any future stories of their later careers were never made as far as I could tell. Plot points and setup for later events left mostly pointless. It's difficult for me to say a blatantly incomplete work is good, but to give some credit, it's not that bad. The life of a child pianist is interesting, and Tezuka draws some nice imagery, so I'll give it a passable grade as we move on to something a little bit more well-rounded. We find ourselves back in the Wild West, sort of, with Captain Ken. In this world, mankind has migrated to Mars. The local Martian population intended to greet the Earthlings in peace, but things quickly went bad. The Martians were slaughtered and enslaved. The lucky ones formed roaming bands and attack whoever they find. But this story isn't about them, but some local Mars-born humans. Mamoru is just an average boy living his ranch life when his family's supposed to be getting a visitor. Someone named Ken is coming to live with them. Mamoru rides out to meet them part way, but finds himself attacked by a local group of Martians. Things look bad until a boy named Captain Ken shows up and saves the day. Astonishingly, this Captain Ken seems to be sympathetic to the Martians, like some weirdo. But why am I even pretending? Mamoru's not dumb and realizes this is the Ken he was riding out to meet. He goes home angry that he has to live with such a disagreeable person, only to learn Ken beat him there. But he doesn't find Captain Ken, the boy, but Ken Mizukami, the girl. He assumes this is Captain Ken dressed as a girl, but no, that's not the case. It's not like Captain Ken could be a girl dressing up as a man. That would just be ridiculous. Or at least, that's what the characters in the story think. It's still ridiculous in real life though, because it's too obvious. So obvious that if Tezuka were to say, write that to be the initial twist, his readers would guess it in an instant because it's a trope of his at this point. Then he'd have to figure out a whole new twist for the story. And that's apparently what happened. I mean, come on, Tezuka. How many times have you had a Western-themed story where a woman dresses up as a man? You had to know your fans would immediately figure it out. So anyways, Captain Ken gives us a mystery as we follow Mamoru and the captain while they deal with the local corrupt mayor and the vengeful Martians, all while figuring out the connection between the two Kens. And to its credit, this is probably one of the best westerns Tezuka's ever written. The story follows a lot of traditional notes, but it's all done competently, and the Ken mystery keeps us guessing. I also love some of the world building. People travel on robot horses because the dust on Mars is too much for cars. Maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't, but I like it. The characters feel well defined, some of them like Mamoru have real arcs they go through, and the writing is pretty solid most of the time. There's one or two weird points, but besides that, Captain Ken does a good job. It was an enjoyable read. And from one western to another, we continue with Dawson Ika no Kiroku, Story of the Dawson Family. We open on a group of brothers making their way to a cabin. These are the Dawson brothers of the Dawson family, with a long lineage of being criminals. The first three to show up carry on that tradition, but the fourth brother, who was adopted, actually managed to become a sheriff. They all come together to see their dying father, whose wishes for them to become better people, as he leaves them with an inheritance. Buried somewhere nearby is a treasure worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. They don't know exactly where, but working together, the four of them might manage to find it. Tensions rise, however, when greed looks like it might get the better of them, and the criminal brothers get a little worried about their familial law enforcement. Story of the Dawson Family has a pretty good premise, with four clearly distinct characters to bounce off of each other. I was quite liking it, but the catch is, this is a short story. At just over 20 pages, the manga ends just as things were getting interesting. Sometimes that's just how it is though. Next up, we have number 7, which isn't notable by itself, but will come up in other places. We start in the middle of the night with the father of our protagonist Shichiro arriving home. He greets his wife, wakes up his son, and takes him for a drive. They go all the way out to the woods, also bringing a weird metal device. Shichiro's father then turns to him and reveals the truth. The world is about to end. The planet is about to be nuclear bombed to destruction, and he brought his secret invention and son to hide in a cave here and sleep for 100 years. Wishing his son the best and to live on, Shichiro finds himself waking up in a strange world. The Earth has changed. It is now home to weird creatures. Also, whatever that device was, it's been stolen. Thankfully, he's rescued and finds himself on the Japanese colony ship. After the Earth was devastated, each country made their own space station to live on, forming a group of colonies together. Shichiro ends up in the care of Dr. Cosme and his assistant Kimiko, who are eager to help him with his weird circumstances. They also reveal that in the aftermath of humans abandoning Earth, aliens have made their way here to claim it. They come in many shapes and sizes, have advanced technology, human disguises, and don't care about killing people to get what they want. To counter this threat, Shichiro becomes a member of the secret Earth Defense Force, codename Number 7. Their goal is to weed out alien spies, get back the device Shichiro's father left him, and protect the Earth and the remaining humans. Number 7 is a lot like the shonen sci-fi series Tezuka's made before, but just a bit better this time around. It's got a bit more character depth and nuance. It's a bit more serious with real stakes, with characters actually dying. It's a bit more interesting all around. There's some drama about Dr. Cosme's assistant Kimiko being a spy that's pretty fun, and we get to follow the growing partnership between Shichiro and Sasaki Kojiro. The manga's not amazing, but it's quite solid. While reading though, I was starting to form the opinion that all the different aliens just being evil was a bit of lazy writing, but Tezuka even twists that around in a way I like. Not much of a spoiler, but a later plot point is the Earth Defense Force discovering non-hostile aliens and being weirded out by it. All the aliens they met till now have been bad. The explanation? The humans have only met the small group of evil opportunist alien races who would be the first to make their way to Earth to take advantage of it. They weren't lacking in nuance, they just legit only met the hostile aliens. That's kinda great. I like that being the reason they give. It's pretty plausible that a bunch of opportunists would be the first aliens to make their way to Earth. Now, Number 7 wouldn't ever get its own anime, or at least not yet, but it actually did get an adaptation as an episode for Mighty Atom. This episode would also be used in the Mighty Atom movie, and shown in color. They did try to make a Number 7 anime, but oh boy. We'll cover all of that when we get to 1 or 3 in the next video. Moving on, Gomenne Mama, or Sorry Mama, takes us back to the classic 4-kama. We follow Yabo and his mother and father through their daily lives as a normal Japanese family. But alongside them, we also follow their other selves. Their inner thoughts portrayed as horned versions of the characters. But don't be confused, they aren't exactly evil, they just personify their temptations and inner wants. Similar to other gag strips, I don't find myself with a lot to say about this, but I did find Sorry Mama to be a better read. For context, this was actually published in one Shufu no Tomo magazine, or Housewife's Friend, targeting an older audience with its humor. That is to say, all the comedy is a bit more well-rounded, and the father and mother are actually more so characters instead of constantly being about the young Yabo. While not a favorite of mine, I got a chuckle or two from these strips, so good job, Sorry Mama. You're my favorite 4-kama Tezuka's made so far. And going from one format to another, we return to the world of picture stories with Hane no Hoshikuzu, Feathers and Stardust. One day, an astronaut named Arima is flying around in space when a strange object gets caught in his rocket. Upon examination, it's like a weird feathery cotton substance, and he and his younger brother Sadao are very interested. But then, there comes a voice, beckoning them to return it. The voice belongs to what claims to be an angel, and these are her wings. If she doesn't get them back, the angel authorities won't be happy. They meet up with the voice to return the wings, but problems arise. During the drop-off, they're discovered by the other angels, and Arima tosses the canister containing the wings to avoid them. The canister finds itself washed away into the hands of a young boy named Kazuo. He and his family are poor and live in a weird dystopian area, where the local corporations control everything, and the threat of AI replacing people's jobs has everyone depressed and on edge. What a strange fictional premise. Kazuo takes out the wings and discovers they can let him fly. Holding onto them like a paddleboard, he sees the lights of the town that he never could and decides to lend them out to share his happiness. But then, the evil corporation boss Koba Inu sees him in the wings and his greed causes a lot of trouble. A bit of a bait and switch with the premise, Feathers and Stardust gives us a set of characters only to mostly dump them in a few pages. Maybe a little clunky, but it all comes back around. The actual story about Cosmo trying to enjoy and share the semi-literal gift from heaven only for human greed to get in the way is a classic tale. The characters aren't too complex, but they represent the themes well, and as a picture story, being mostly text with an illustration or two every other page, the art looks pretty good. It has a touch more detail compared to Tezuka's usual manga panels. Feathers and Stardust can feel like its premises are a bit messy and underutilized, but it reminded me of a classic children's story or fairy tale. It's got a bit of that timeless feel to it, I guess. So, overall, not my favorite, but at least the art is pretty nice. Ningen no Senzo, or Human Conflict, gives us another 2-page short. In the future, scientists are debating whether or not humans evolved from monkeys or not. One scientist says this is stupid and that he'll just go back in time with this time machine to prove evolution. A young girl reporter hops in with him, and the two end up in prehistoric times, when a dinosaur crushes their machine. Stranded, the two become Adam and Eve, being the real origin of humanity. Or maybe not, and this could just be an old scientist theory? I'm not sure how I'm supposed to interpret it, but apparently humans get nostalgic when they look at wallets because wallets look like the time machine, and it's hard-coded into our DNA. I love it when the script makes me say really random sentences like this. Back to saner content, we've got a good one next. Remember Aoi 3 from 1956, that wartime story Tezuka didn't get to finish? Maybe you also remember him recycling part of it into 58's The Film Lives On. Well, if you recall even more, one of the plotlines in Aoi 3 revolved around a reporter dealing with the hardships the job could entail. Well, in the postscript interview for Aoi 3, Tezuka says that concept is what eventually became Ari no Kyojin, the Ant and the Giant. We open on wartime Japan, specifically on a certain tree. A tall camphor tree stands nearby when a soldier is seeing off his wife and infant child. He tells his wife that he and the tree had been friends for a long time, and to, tell their child to think of the tree as their father? I'm sure it's very poetic, but years later, the young Masa does call the tree dad. One day, he's left there while his mother goes to work in the factory. And then the bombers come. Masa finds himself a war orphan. One of the planes goes down and an American pilot lands by the tree. He realizes he just killed Masa's mom, and as an apology, leaves a will in a hole in the tree. Masa grows up, befriending another orphan named Mugi. The two become inseparable, and when occupying soldiers find the note and learn Masa's entitled to millions of dollars, he declines the money on 2 conditions. Get Mugi medical treatment for a recent injury, and to not cut down the tree. From here, the two boys go their separate ways. Masa goes to Tokyo and becomes a reporter, hard-working and with a strong sense of justice. Mugi, meanwhile, stays in town, even after he's all healed up. He gets involved with a bad crowd and finds himself a leading figure in the local gangs. The two's paths will cross one day when Mugi gets hired to kill off a politician, and Masa stakes his life on reporting the truth and finding the culprit. Unaware, it's his dear friend. We'll even see the two of them age as time progresses, as their values and their friendship slowly drift apart. Compared to Tezuka's previous works, The Ant and the Giant is a legit drama. The characters and storytelling are a real step up. Masa and Mugi live in opposite worlds, but still try to be each other's best friend through it all, even when their lives make them enemies. In my opinion, these are easily some of Tezuka's best characters by this point in his career, and maybe even a bit after. The dynamic is just really solid. There's also a fun romance plot between Masa and a girl at his reporting job, Harumi. But the real star character of this manga is Tezuka. Yeah, he has a rare plot importance appearance here, not just a cameo. He's an insect researcher. How fitting. But speaking of characters, did you know the tree is one? I didn't mention it before, but the tree actually talks to the animals and comments on the story every now and then. If I may give a small criticism, I don't think these sections really add much to the manga, and they feel a little jarring. The animals are a bit more cartoony, and next to the more dramatic story, I don't feel like they mix well. In the postscript interview for The Ant and the Giant, Tezuka actually describes the original idea as a fantastical story focused around the tree and the animals. But, paraphrasing his own words, the two main characters acted on their own and developed this story themselves. In summary though, The Ant and the Giant is great. A well done tale of two friends becoming enemies while still holding each other dear. It's one of Tezuka's best works so far, and I think I'd say it still holds up even compared to some of his later material. Next up's Kurochoro no Boken, or Kurochoro's Adventure, and it actually gives us a theming bonus, as it's also about ants. or rather, it's actually about ants instead of it being a metaphor. It introduces us to an ant colony, and one ant in particular, whose name I guess is Kurochoro. He's tasked with looking after an egg by his mother, but when it starts to rain and they rush to gather leaves for shelter, he accidentally finds himself lost and trying to find his way back home while keeping the egg safe. Along the way, he'll meet many friendly bugs and the occasional unfriendly one. In summary, it's another cutesy comic for the kids where Tezuka can show off his love of insects. Perhaps that wasn't that interesting, but let's mix things up a bit and briefly talk about a non-manga entry. Details are pretty sparse on this one, but the Devil Garen had a live-action pilot or something produced around this time. I think it was intended to be made into a TV series. It doesn't look like anything would really come from it, but we do have some production pictures. So here you go, live-action Garen. A live-action series that did get produced, however, belongs to Fushigi no Shonen, the Mysterious Boy. What, you don't remember that one? Well, that's because we haven't gone to it yet. And no, this isn't like Piron, the manga was actually based on the show. Remember back to 1951's The New World of Lulu? I mentioned at the end how a character stopping time becomes a thing in that story. Well, years later, an NHK employee saw it and asked Tezuka to write a TV drama starring a boy hero stopping time and saving the day. So, The Mysterious Boy got made as a live-action show, with Tezuka making a manga adaptation shortly after. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like any of this show remains and may be lost media. According to what I could find, episodes were 15 minutes long and were frequently live broadcast. Scenes of the main character stopping time required the actors to freeze in place, which reportedly had funny results. Also, the line "time stop" became a catchphrase. I wonder if this means Tezuka originated catchphrase activated time stop. Well, without much solid info to give on the TV series, let's just move on to the manga. For the record, it looks like the base premise is pretty much the same, so we can assume the TV series had a similar setup. A young boy named Sabuton is walking through an underground tunnel one day. Everything's fine when suddenly he sees a strange person-shaped imprint on the wall. When he goes to examine it, he ends up getting sucked in and vanishes. The first few pages are a real mystery as his family looks for him, but he keeps appearing and disappearing across Japan. Eventually though, he gets a handle on things. Sabuton found himself in the 4th dimension, and with the new ability to stop time at will. After he learns how to control his powers, he uses them to save the day and prevent disasters. But of course, as what usually happens with manga like this, bad people will notice and try to use Sabuton to their advantage. A simple premise, but I think it's done well enough. Sabuton's a decently written protagonist. He wrestles with the idea of using his powers for self-gain, he gets angry when people write him off as being insane, and he hates being treated like a science experiment. Unlike Tezuka's usual child protagonist, he feels like a well-written 3-dimensional character. Or at least before he's made to a 2-dimensional one in the story. Oh yeah, you know how he convinces himself not to use his powers for evil? He takes inspiration from his personal hero, Superman. Like, actual Superman. This isn't even going to be the last time I bring up Superman in these videos. I can't wait to show you one much later. But back to the manga in question, there's some neat stuff here. Tezuka explores the 4th dimension, explaining the concept well to his young readers. It's mysterious and also filled with these advanced beings that sort of help Sabuton. But every now and then, it feels like Tezuka wastes the premise a little. There's actually a story point where Sabuton stops time to find a guy framing him for a crime, but he has no idea where to look. So he keeps time stopped and we flash forward 10 years later. Sabuton finally finds the guy and gets him arrested, and then we just don't bring it up again. Any mental development or experiences or trauma he had while freezing time and roaming around for 10 years is just ignored. That could have been a great thing to follow up on, but no, I guess we had to keep the manga lighthearted for the children. And speaking of odd writing, next up is a surprisingly dense Ozma Taicho, or Captain Ozma. It's a picture story again, filled with text, and it's 5 volumes long. 5. That's a lot of text. In the world of Captain Ozma, some scientists tricked a bunch of adults into injecting their kids with genius medicine, creating a bunch of very intelligent children. One of these children was Ozma, who now works as a member of the World Children's League, who are essentially a global police force. Ozma grew up thinking he was abandoned by his parents, but upon discovering his mother's diary, learns there was much more to it. His father developed a drug that solidifies things, and alongside Ozma's mother, went into hiding to prevent it from being used as a weapon. They were supposed to be in a solidified hibernation, but an evil group discovers them, and now Ozma and his partner Abe need to rescue Ozma's parents and prevent the drug from being used for evil. That's the initial plot anyways. Afterwards, Captain Ozma goes into a more episodic format, with standalone stories following Ozma and Abe dealing with new cases. And to summarize my problems with this series, it goes from having a plot to kind of having none. I think Ozma and Abe are fun together, both helping and needing to be helped by the other, but other than that, this is all just typical Tezuka by this point. Young boy protagonist in a sci-fi world in a detective-esque role? We've seen all this before. He's never made it quite so wordy, but besides the style choice, Captain Ozma just doesn't leave me with much to say about it. There's no longer a main plot to really comment on. Ozma is very standard as a protagonist. It's a little odd to have a serialized story turn into a non-serialized one, but that's really all I've got to say in regards to Captain Ozma, besides me wishing some of those extra volumes would have been given to something else. Following that surprisingly lengthy entry, we've got some shorter reads. Next up is Ningen Bokujo, the Human Ranch. We open on a world described as monotonous, where every day is the same. A strange object falls from the sky, and 4 people get a note to meet in a park at night. When they arrive, a man shows up and tells them they aren't on Earth. This is just a place made to resemble their hometown, explaining why everything's so repetitive. It turns out the 4 of them were actually abducted by aliens in order to study human behavior. A daring escape ensues, and they all manage to return home. Only for a year to pass, and they all find themselves once again in a repetitive life as if nothing's changed. Following that is 1961's Bongo. If you're wondering why I specified the year, it's because Bongo will get another adaptation in 1964. Bongo takes us to the Amazon rainforest, where the hunt is on for a lost Incan treasure. Bongo himself is a young boy who acts as defender of the forest and friend to the animals. He ends up rescuing a girl named Millie, who comes with a special journal meant to help find the treasure. Said journal gets stolen by some greedy men, with Bongo and Millie teaming up and chasing after them to protect the treasure from falling into the wrong hands. They're also joined by Bongo's friends, a squirrel and a jaguar, I think. And so, we've got a classic race to the treasure story, set in an exciting place like the Amazon. And this is a special version of it, cause it comes with cactus people. There's just sentient cactus golems walking around. Other than the occasional weirdness, the story is mostly what you'd expect. They make their way through deadly situations and discover more about Bongo's mysterious past and his connections to the Inca. It's all pretty standard and by the book, but not bad at all. Also, it actually keeps going past the treasure hunt part, which is the majority of the manga. For some reason, Tezuka wrote this extra story about Bongo fighting a giant crocodile. It's not important and feels pretty unnecessary. But, all in all, Bongo 61 isn't half bad. And you know what? I'm just gonna briefly jump ahead to 1964 and talk about that version of Bongo over here. Take the premise of a jungle boy named Bongo, put him in Africa, make it more kid-friendly, and that's it. The jaguar is now a lion, and there's a little bit of a plot around Bongo fighting a legendary golden bow. But that's really all there is to say here. It's a less interesting version of the story, with less character, and for some reason on an opposite part of the world. Making our way back to 1961, we have Hinowa, Ring of Fire. We open on the Prince of Wolves out hunting when he finds himself caught in a trap. Distraught, he looks up to the sun blazing overhead, the legendary Ring of Fire. It's said that among wolves, those who die valiantly will pass through it to paradise, but given that he's caught, he's captured and put on display. In the city, he meets a female circus wolf named Belle, and they become friends, maybe even more. But when opportunity arrives, the prince flees into the wild, abandoning Belle for being domesticated and not a real wolf. He should be happy to be free, but he isn't. Returning out of guilt, he sees Belle practicing her routine, jumping through flaming hoops. Then the prince sees danger, with one of the rings being at risk of falling. Just as a man aims a gun at him, he realizes that, even if not raised in the wild, Belle is a wolf in her own way, and he dies valiantly to protect her, maybe making his way to paradise through the Ring of Fire. A solid little short. I always love it when animals are given their own mythologies in stories like this. You know, our next entry, Shiroi Pilot or the White Pilot, also has a dog in it. Before it starts, there's a little blurb from Tezuka talking about the psychic abilities of Siamese twins and specific instructions to remember the dog, because they'll be important later. Does the dog warrant the disclaimer? Maybe. The White Pilot takes us to the lovely country of Migurusha. It's small, but has a strong military. This includes a secret police, led by one Mello, who one day make their way to Dr. Posk's house and kill him and his wife. Their twin kids are outside being looked after by the dog. For some reason, the orders are to capture the children as well as the dog specifically, but when the dog gets shot off a cliff, they make do with the kids. Luckily for the secret police, they get a bonus with Detective Bond, who saw what was going on, tried to help, and got captured. Bond and the kids are transported to the country's underground slave factory, but before that, a certain person shows up. The queen of the country is driving by when she somehow hears a baby crying in the temporarily unguarded transport car. She decides this is destiny, and to save both children from eternal servitude. Nah, just kidding. She saves one of them. There's no reason for it, she just decides she needs only one child, and that the other can be left to be a slave. I'm not saying she's a bad person, but, well, long live the new Prince Mars. On Bond's end, he's taken underground and put in an iron mask for misbehaving, programmed to come off in 12 years. He sees the other child be brought in and decides to adopt the newly named Daisuke. Years pass and Prince Mars suffers from a strange ailment. Every day at 6:15, he suffers a mysterious pain. One day he asks Mello about this and he answers, "Weird, that's coincidentally when we always tortured that one guy underground." Mars goes to meet this mystery man and is shocked to see the resemblance between him and Daisuke. It also doesn't take long for Mello to find out about this weird connection. We shift over to Daisuke as the main protagonist for the story, and we follow him escaping from the underground factory, along with a band of young slave friends and his adopted dad Bond. They steal the new experimental ship, the Hurricane, and in vengeance, a slave named Chris decides to bomb the royal capital. This results in dead innocents, a dead queen, a vengeful Prince Mars, and the world watching them as international criminals. So ends the first half of the story, as the crew of the Hurricane must clear their names and one day return to destroy the underground factory. Where to start with the White Pilot? Its 2 volumes are split between this more dramatic escape story and them landing on the island of misfit Tezuka stars and becoming vigilante heroes while trying to clear their names. It's a bit of a tone shift, and I'd say I like the first half more. Not to say the second half is bad though, it certainly has some good moments. The characters aren't half bad either. Daisuke initially seems like another headstrong protagonist, but once he becomes impromptu leader, he gets some layers. Leadership of the Hurricane becomes a constant plot point, and he butts heads with his more vengeful-minded members while respecting that their feelings are completely warranted. It's maybe a little odd writing that they don't nominate the older, wiser, respected Iron Masked Bond as captain, but we gotta have the kids be the heroes for the kids manga. As for villains, Mello and the other secret policemen aren't half bad. I feel like there's real danger at points, and some of the members of the Hurricane crew do in fact die. Mars' arrival to Daisuke maybe isn't the best. Tezuka could have made him go a bit darker, but he's alright. The White Pilot ends up a pretty good read, but I feel like I'm forgetting something important about it. Oh yeah, all the slaves are dressed as Mickey Mouse. Seriously, they dress all the slaves as Mickey because they're locked underground forever like mice. I don't know if this was a shot at Disney's working practices at the time or what, but I find it very funny in a modern context. Ohana Jimon no Ella-chan, or My Favorite Ella-chan, is the picture book for the kids. A bunch of animals go to the woods for a picnic, including an elephant named Ella-chan. Ella-chan convinces the others to wander further in, saying there's no need to fear about getting lost, as they can find their way back with their special nose. Ella-chan ends up burning their nose on hot soup, and the dog, Ron-chan, uses their nose to guide everyone back instead. The moral of the story is not to be overconfident in your own talents. Dipping our toe back into the world of television, we have an adaptation of Sorry Mama. Unfortunately, I can't really find anything on this one. It seems to have lasted almost a year and was broadcast on Tokyo Television, but that's about all I can see about it. Added to the list of lost media live-action Tezuka stuff. Yoko-chan ga Kita Yo, or Little Yoko's here, brings us back to the classic recurring Tezuka theme of feminism. An expecting mother looks up to the night sky and spots the wishing star. She laments how she had to give up her dream of being a ballerina due to her weak heart, and wishes to give birth to a child strong in body and spirit. Her wish is heard, and 2 angels are sent down to make it come true. But oh no, she gave birth to a daughter. It would be outrageous to make a girl strong, so says the male angel. The female one chastises him for his outdated thinking. In the end, the wish is granted, and Yoko grows up to be a bit of a tomboy. Full name Yoshiko Nakano, which I point out because Tezuka apologizes to anyone reading with that name, is kind-hearted but a bit of a scamp. She's more interested in model guns than anything ladylike. Her father runs an amateur children's theater group, but when Yoko accidentally gets him in trouble, he pivots to TV. This brings Yoko to a studio where she accidentally makes a name for herself while sabotaging her mom's old ballet rival. Disguising herself as a young boy, we follow her career as a rising star. I think it's fair to say little Yoko takes a page or two from good old Princess Knight. Both are stories about girls pretending to be men after getting an quote-unquote unladylike disposition from divine intervention. Yoko even looks a bit like Sapphire, though I don't think they're the same Tezuka star. The point is, this is familiar territory for Tezuka, and he does it decently. If I may offer a criticism though, it does feel a bit too short. It feels like there is room to flesh out the plot and characters, but then it just kind of ends. It's not a bad ending, it just feels like more could have been done with it. Maybe bring the angels back past the beginning, or give Yoko's mom something to do. Still, it's nice to see Tezuka continue to make strong role models for his female demographic. Following that return to form, we have something a bit more unusual. Tetsu no Michi, the Iron Road, doesn't open up in any era of Japan, but Rome. It introduces us to the mighty Akira Tasu, the strongest Roman general alive, with the very un-Roman name. One day he hears tell of a mysterious Easterner, who may be even stronger than he is, and the story actually ends up following that guy instead. I'm honestly a bit disappointed. A manga set in Rome sounds a bit original by this point. Anyways, here's Takeru, a Japanese boy in the process of killing tigers in China. The people he saves end up being very impressed with him and ask him to guard their merchant caravan, making their way down the Silk Road to the west. Takeru is glad to join, along with the merchant's daughter Ai Lin, acting as love interest, Li Lun, the leader of the caravan, and Ton Man, another Chinese guard who doesn't take kindly to barbaric Japanese people. The road ahead is long and treacherous, and try as Takeru might, Ton Man and the impending Akira Tasu will cause problems. Despite my initial disappointment with the bait and switch over the main character, the Iron Road is another solid adventure. Lots of things can and will happen on the trek from China to wherever it is they're specifically going. Takeru's multiple tiger killing strength is a bit odd, but he's still a likable character, with a bit of development as the story moves along. But you may be wondering, why is it the Iron Road? Is there iron as part of the story? Well, as mentioned, they're traveling on the Silk Road, but Tezuka also named it after the silent film The Iron Horse, from 1924. Do these things have any connection besides the naming reference? Not really, no. These actually have very little in common. The Iron Horse is a story about them building the American Railway, some landowner guy trying to make it go through his territory, and fighting against the natives as the main character gets revenge for his dad. There's really not a lot in common. And as a mini review for it, my thoughts on the Iron Horse is that it's overly long and boring. Man, this movie's over 100 years old. Tezuka's constantly got me watching old movies for context. Hoshi no Kankuru ni Itako, the child who went to the star competition, is a whole 2 pages long. It looks like it's about a spaceship coming down and asking children to help judge stars. Or planets to be more accurate. They judge a few, the children show their bias by deciding their own planet is the best, and then the twist is they have tails and haven't been human this whole time. I guess that's the twist? Happy Morimoto, or Happy Guinea Pig, is actually a short story, just a few pages long. It starts with someone gathering 5 random people from a coffee shop. They all meet at a park late at night, and for the record they're all named A, B, C, etc. Our narrator asks them about their lives, makes it a point they all live fairly well, and tells them the truth. They were all abducted by aliens, and this is a replica of their town. Wait a minute, this is the human ranch again. It looks like there's some extra twist about, I think, the aliens abducting more people. It's just always weird when I see Tezuka reuse something so obviously and so soon. At least give it a few years, Tezuka. Uchukara no SOS, an SOS from space, introduces us to Ichiro. He works at the Space Rescue Center and responds to distress calls. One day, such a call comes in, but it's quite the distance away. He has no choice but to pilot a special vehicle that goes faster than light to reach it in time. But when he gets there, there's no one to be found. It's the right spot, but just him. All of a sudden, a meteor shower destroys part of his ship, and he sends out his own SOS, only for his past self to respond to the call, forming a loop. Just one of those weird time things that happens with faster than light travel. I'm not sure it entirely makes sense, but relative time confuses me, and I'm not a scientist. Meanwhile, Nobara no Sei, the spirit of the wild rose, takes us back to the realm of shoujo with a dash of fairy tales. In a random European village lives a girl named Julie. She lives with her father and sick mother, while also having feelings for the doctor's son Rami. Things are nice, until one fateful day. The 2 countries whose borders pass through the village start warring, and soldiers put up a fence in the middle of the town dividing it. Loved ones are separated, and the doctor finds himself on the opposite side of Julie's mom. He tries to sneak over in the dark to tend to his patients, but he's found by the guards and never seen again. Julie's dad tries to get medicine, and the same happens to him. Furthermore, this leaves Julie's mom without care, leading to Julie becoming an orphan along with Rami. Separated by the fence, they promise to be there for each other, but when Julie's aunt arrives to take care of her, it's more of an evil stepmother situation. One day, while being asked to pick roses to sell, Julie encounters a young starving girl named Sylvia. She brings her home to try and get her some care, but rumors of a runaway princess from the enemy country are spreading. Let's just say, Julie and Sylvia aren't about to have an easy time. Right off the bat, let's get this fun fact out of the way. In an interview about this work, Tezuka says the original story was going to be more realistic, something like a Napoleonic War drama, but then his editors came and asked him to make it more like a fairy tale, so he had to change the story and its overall direction. You can see the shift in tone when you're looking for it. It's actually a little jarring when you pay attention and see the initial setup just kinda stop mattering. I think it's a bit of a shame because I was liking the original direction the manga was going. But, troubled behind the scenes aside, I think Tezuka still ended up writing an enjoyable story. It's got a classic fairy tale feel to it, as intended. I may have preferred the original concept and would have liked to see where he went with it, but what we ended up with isn't that bad. By this point, Tezuka knows how to write a solid fairy tale-esque manga. From shoujo to shonen, next is Yusha Dan, or Brave Dan. We open on a logging project in the Japanese woods, where a worker gets a little fed up with their boss and ends up killing him. He takes his family and flees, in the process saving a tiger who escaped a transport to the zoo. The family and tiger form a truce to look after each other, but then the mother and father disappear and... I'll get back to that in a moment. Anyways, this leaves the young Kotan and Dan the tiger to bond. They're followed by an old man named Upopo who lives in the ruins of the Ainu, and who believes Kotan to be the Ainu chosen one from his ability to befriend a tiger. For those who don't know, the Ainu are an indigenous ethnic group in northern Japan. Years pass, and Kotan and Dan become great partners, so Upopo leaves Kotan with the final gift. One of 3 keys to the ancient Ainu treasure, which could change the world. He kept the key hidden as a tumor in his arm. It's kinda cool actually. But there's no time, as a villainous group, including a Chinese guy named Kosakoku, are after the keys. Kosakoku even has one already. Kotan and Dan will have to try their best to survive, stop these guys from getting the apparently very dangerous treasure, and protect Dan from normal people who just see him as a dangerous tiger. Another race to the treasure story. This time around, I think Tezuka makes it a bit more interesting. I like the 3 keys angle, and while initially just a bad guy, Kosakoku becomes a decent rival for Kotan. The friendship between Kotan and Dan is also nice, alongside the threat of regular people, meaning they need to avoid normal towns. It's solid, but there's just one thing I realized looking back. I swear Kotan's parents are never really explained. Dan wanders off, hears baby Kotan crying, and finds him alone with a scent of gunpowder around. Did his parents just abandon him to run away? Did they assume Dan would come back and look after him? Maybe I missed it, but I don't think so. It's never confirmed what really happened, and it feels like they'll be brought up again at some later point in the story, but they aren't. They effectively just disappeared from the plot for unexplained reasons. It's a bit weird. And speaking of weird things, let's talk about Arabian Nights Sinbad no Boken, or Arabian Nights Sinbad the Sailor, an animated theatrical film. Tezuka's on staff here for writing the screenplay, maybe making this the first finished movie he's worked on, because of how unclear his involvement with the Journey to the West movie is. Anyways, the movie's obviously about the famous Arabian figure Sinbad, and, well, Sinbad's certainly in it. Okay, so the story stars Sinbad and his younger brother Ali. One day, they meet an old man who tells them about an island of gems, and then he just dies. The two of them dream of being sailors one day and finding the... Well, I was gonna say Treasure Island to joke about that being a different story, but in some ways this movie actually has a bit more in common with that than the actual story of Sinbad. Anyways, Sinbad and Ali eventually end up as crew on board the ship of an old captain. They land in a kingdom, and a misunderstanding results in the crew plus one princess sailing off, chased around by an evil advisor character who wants the treasure plus the princess. So, this movie doesn't exactly follow the original Sinbad story, and that's disappointing, but that's not the weird thing about it. No, the thing about this movie is that Sinbad almost doesn't do anything in it. A lot of the time, we actually follow his younger brother Ali, and he feels like the main character of the film. Sinbad barely even speaks, and doesn't have much of a personality. The movie's fine, a bit predictable but fine. I think the art style is nice. I just remember finishing it and wondering why Sinbad felt so minor in the movie named after him. He gets an action scene in the end, but besides that, this is Ali the Sailor featuring Sinbad. Really, they could have just made Sinbad do all the stuff Ali did, and it might have made the movie better. For the record, I'm seeing reports that Toei Animation, the guys who made this, interfered a lot with the writing process. Tezuka and Kita, the other writer, apparently weren't too happy with the final product, so I don't blame them for these creative decisions. Moving on, Ni Kara ni Okaseba ni, or 2 minus 2 equals 2, is a sci-fi short story. A crime boss tortures a scientist and his son into making a robot duplicate to take his place in a gang war. The duplicate is made, the crime boss goes to hide in the countryside, and all seems to be going as planned. But then the duplicate starts to act a bit differently from the boss. This one's pretty short, but I liked it. Tayogasa Kastamada, or The Sun is Upside Down, is a bit odd in its framing. It opens on Tezuka himself visiting a school to ask about him. The person in question is never named and only referred to vaguely like this, but as far as I can tell, this isn't a true story, just a framing device. Tezuka asks about him, and the principal points to a painting he did when he was a student. He drew the sun rising in the west, and his art teacher got mad because that's wrong. The art teacher tried repeatedly to get him to redraw it, but he never would. He believed there could be cases where the sun could rise from the west. Year after year, until he graduated, it hung as a mocking gesture. All until one day, he became an astronaut and radioed in from space. Can you hear me, Sensei? I'm rotating around the Earth, seeing the sun rise from the west. It feels like this is supposed to be some kind of inspirational story, but to me it just comes off as a spite-driven guy going to absurd lengths to prove his teacher wrong. Hata no Aitsu, the guy next to me, gives us another short story. A rich man named Mr. S has been in a traffic accident recently, and while he survived, he found himself disabled and slowly approaching death. One day, at a party to try and lift his spirits, he suddenly feels a presence next to him, a man no one else can see. Mr. S tries to make the most of his time, and even makes the acquaintance of a young girl, but even then, he drives her away when he feels the presence and thinks she's deceiving him. As his condition worsens, he becomes accustomed to the presence, to the point it becomes comforting. And then one day, Mr. S passes on, and we get the truth. It turns out that accident didn't leave him in a wheelchair like we were led to believe. Mr. S had his brain implanted into a robot body. The scientists weren't sure if it would work properly, and theorized he may feel some strange sensations and the phantom presence of his own body. Yeah, I thought it was like the spirit of death or something, but it's some weird phantom limb-like situation. Backnet no Aoikage, translated to blue shadow behind the backnet or sometimes greenhorn behind the backstop, takes us to the wonderful sport of baseball. Thinking back, Tezuka doesn't really do sports often, does he? We open on a rainy night with players Inumaru and Eda taking a drive. Inumaru stops the car and asks the question, how did Eda suddenly become so good out of nowhere, and what's that thing he used to drink? Eda tells the story of how an old man gave him a potion one day. If you drink it, you start to see a blue shadow, and if you mimic what the shadow does, everything always works out. But he was warned not to take it more than once a day, and to stop using it once you've gained confidence in your abilities. Inumaru convinces Eda to give him the potion as he doesn't use it anymore, and as thanks, he knocks him out and plunges the car into a swamp. Now Inumaru has the potion and got away with murder, but what's the truth behind the shadow? Overall, another pretty good sci-fi short from Tezuka. And with that, we've made it a good way through the video. I hope you're finding it at least a little bit interesting. But before we proceed, let's give some important context for Tezuka's life going forward. By now he had a little experience in TV adaptations and animations of his work. In terms of his overall animation work, the Journey to the West and Sinbad movies were done with Toei. But after his contract with them expired, he decided to open up his own animation studio, Mushi Productions, and it's here, with his own studio to work with, that he would really start to get into animation. On that note, we return to the realm of animation for a bit, introducing Aru Machikado no Monogatari, Tales of a Street Corner, the first theme made by Mushi Productions. Across his life, Tezuka would help create several animated shorts. They're usually experimental in some way, and funny enough, the first one isn't exactly short with its 40-minute runtime. Tezuka's listed in the credits as writer and executive producer. Tales of a Street Corner isn't so much a narrative-focused animation. It opens on a girl losing her bear in a gutter, and there's also a family of mice, with one in particular forming a friendship with the bear. We then pan down to the posters that line the alleyway, whose characters are all alive. There's a moth that lives with the posters, and a street lamp hanging on to its last moments, but in terms of a plot, there is, but there isn't one. What is there mostly revolves around the posters. There's a budding romance between a violinist poster and a new pianist poster. There's a jealous dancer poster to add a layer to that. There's also the new arrival of a military poster, bringing down the mood in the alley, and eventually spreading. I like this concept of the lives of these posters. I feel there's a lot of potential in the idea. But instead, we spend a lot of time with the moth, and I don't know if Tales of the Street Corner needed to be 40 minutes long and include everything it did. At the very end, it picks up and pays off with the message about life persevering through war, but the middle part of the short was dragging a bit in my opinion. I thought it had a nice art style, and having no dialogue, just visuals and music, it felt very Fantasia-esque. It's honestly not half bad. I think its ideas had some real potential, but ultimately, I think Tales of a Street Corner could have trimmed some of its fat. But apparently, it was well received, so what the heck do I know? The important part is that it got eyes on Bushi Productions. On the other hand, we have the next short, an Osu, or Male, and this one's actually a short, only being 3 minutes long. Once again, Tezuka's on staff as producer. Male presents itself as a dark room or screen where we get little windows to peer into it and see what's going on. We see a man who's sitting there nervously, and we also see the room has 2 cats. We go back and forth a little between the two, the man gets more nervous, and the cats do their own thing. What's going on in this room? I'll leave it to you to find out. In terms of enjoyment, I don't really have much to say about Male. Its motif of seeing glimpses of what's happening is neat, but it can also feel a bit gimmicky if you know what I mean. There's just not a lot to say about this one. But oh boy, is there something to be said of our next animation, or rather, animated series. The first animated series. It's 1963, and the anime for Tetsuwan Atom, Mighty Atom, Astro Boy, makes its debut on Japanese television. This was the first fully animated, full-length TV show made in Japan. Not a short or animated part in a live-action show. The first TV anime. And so, history is made, and Bushi Productions is going to get a lot busier. If you know the premise of the manga, the anime doesn't change too much. Adam is made as a replacement child when Dr. Tenma loses his real son in an accident, only to sell him off, leaving Adam to become a superhero. Episodes frequently feature him beating up villainous groups, or dealing with robot relations and how they interact with humans. The animation is of course a little choppy and poor. Tezuka pioneered a method of quick and easy, lazy animating to get episodes out. Shots will frequently feature just a close-up of the character's face, with only their eyes and mouth really animating. It could be seen as low effort, but it got the job done. Surprisingly, I found watching this wasn't too bad despite its age. I went in expecting worse. But really, the important thing is that this was a landmark in Japanese television. Tezuka just pioneered TV anime, instead of it being restricted to expensive movies or shorts or animated segments of live-action shows. This was a big deal in Japan. Heck, it was a big deal in the West, as Mighty Atom would be brought over as Astro Boy before too long, starting the wave of bringing over anime to English-speaking audiences. I'll probably have a bit more to say about the show in the eventual Mighty Atom video, but really, the show's more about its legacy than its content. From this point on, anime really is on the docket. Can you believe it took us this long to get here? Even when I'm trying to be brief, it still took hours. Consider that whenever you see someone start to talk about Tezuka, and the conversation begins here. But Mighty Atom's not the only blast from the past, as 1953's Princess Knight just got a remake. Rewritten and redrawn, it's the story you know and love, but with 10 years of improved art. Man, putting this and the original side by side really shows Tezuka's progress. Interestingly, if you go searching for a copy of Princess Knight, this is most likely the version you'll find. This remake has basically replaced the original. What reasons besides the art could lead to this? What changes have been made to the story? Stay tuned for the eventual Princess Knight video to find out. Back to more original works, Saigo wa Kimida, You're the Last One, is another short story. Some Japanese town finds itself stealthily invaded by a foreign army, and 3 boys are tasked to deliver a letter to the nearby airbase without being seen. But will they be able to make it with soldiers chasing after them? And will their friendship survive the struggle? Another pretty good one. I could easily see this being the plot of a good movie. Heck, there probably is a movie out there with a plot like this. One of Tezuka's better shorts by this point. And keeping the quality going, we have Shinsengumi. For a history lesson, the Shinsengumi were a real organization in Japan during the 1860s. In short, they were a police-like force that worked to quell rebels against the shogunate government at the time. They show up a good bit in Japanese pulp culture, and this means it's no surprise for Tezuka to take a turn adapting their story, or rather make some historical fiction around them. As far as I can tell, Tezuka's Shinsengumi isn't so much about historical events, but an original story with the Shinsengumi as a backdrop. We open on a man fleeing from a group of swordsmen. A shop owner hides him, but he's discovered anyways and killed. And for hiding the man in the first place, the shop owner, father of protagonist Kyujiro, is also killed. This leaves Kyujiro with a dead dad and a burning desire for revenge against his father's killers. He then meets one Osamu Kondo, head of the Shinsengumi, and is given an offer. If he has nothing left, come find him. Time passes and Kyujiro does just that. Joining the ranks of the Shinsengumi to learn the way of the sword, he befriends fellow recruit Daisuke and works hard to grow strong enough to enact his revenge. But we'll also learn that the Shinsengumi have some bad apples. Not only will Kyujiro need to deal with his personal vendetta, but the corruption inside his new organization. Shinsengumi was a very fun read, a great blend of action, drama, and a dash of political intrigue. Kyujiro is a more complex character than we usually get. He has real motivation, character flaws, and development as the story goes on. We have some nice supporting characters too. On that note, I bet a fun aspect of this would be reading it and recognizing all these historical figures, but I'm not too familiar with Shinsengumi lore. It's all lost on me. Didn't hamper my enjoyment at all though. I think Tezuka also had fun drawing it. There's some good dramatic panels here, especially the final fight. But I have one minor critique. I also feel like he drew it at times to keep it PG. He angles things just right to not have to show blood or gore. It's not like it's a real problem or anything, I just couldn't help but notice. Still, up to this point, this is honestly one of Tezuka's best works. I usually wish I'd get an anime or something, but this is actually one of Tezuka's works that most recently got an adaptation, with the 2024 live-action series Kimi no Yukitesaku Shinsengumi Seishun Roku. It's a bit different than the manga, but I'll save my thoughts on that for later, all in due time. Following Shinsengumi's quality, we come to another mixed bag. It's time for SF Fancy Free, or Science Fiction Fancy Free, another anthology work a la Lion Books. But these short stories aren't quite the same. No, SF Fancy Free consists of stories that are mostly 5 pages each. The question then becomes, are any of them any good despite their length? Also, because of their shortness, I'm just going to be spoiling most of them. Not all though. Zensoku no Otoko, the man with asthma, stars a man with asthma. He's taken by another strange man to a machine, where all his past and future ancestors and descendants are. It turns out this asthma is hereditary, and his descendant from the far-off future of 2003 has made a medicine to eradicate the gene if the most distant ancestor takes it. They travel back in time to find him, succeed in doing so, but when the man decides to stay in this peaceful era, his ancestor vanishes. It turns out he is his most distant ancestor. Ushiro no Showman, right behind, starts by introducing the president of NGN Studios, a probable reference to MGM Studios. They produce films you can feel with all 5 senses, but they just aren't capturing the audience anymore. So he decides to be more visceral content, and sends a crew to find and film weird aliens. In the process, they get stranded on another planet for 30 years, until they find their rocket ship again, along with a film reel and a note. It turns out the local aliens of this planet got a similar idea to go and film other species, and so the humans' 30 years of barbarian living has been turned into a hit film. A croquette is defined as basically a roll or ball of some filling fried with a breadcrumb coating. In Ensho, or inflammation, a croquette magically appears in a farmer's kitchen one day. When he tries to eat it, it divides into 2 more, generating infinite food. This astounds the world, solves food shortages, and as you can guess from infinite replication, it causes problems. Unable to destroy them, the world is about to be overrun by the things, but then they all vanish. Narration then explains that this was a weird alien medicine to cure the planet of nuclear radiation. Soko de Yubiga, or There's a Finger There, is actually a pretty novel idea. It opens on this priest who listens to confessions all day. It tires him out, but one day, he gets the feeling someone's watching him. But that's alright, that must be God keeping an eye on his followers. Then, a woman screams, having seen a mysterious flesh thing floating in midair. The image of it is a little strange. Everyone feels like someone's watching them, and then we go to a bar. There, a fan of science fiction explains dimensions and how a one-dimensional world would compare to their own two-dimensional one, and how a three-dimensional being would look at them as lower life forms. They once again spot the flesh thing as it turns the page. And it's us. It's our own thumb and eyes, being the eldritch god to these 2D people. What a fun little fourth wall break? I don't know, what would this be called? At any rate, a cool inventive little manga. But hold on just a moment, there's an important question that needs to be asked. Remember, every Tezuka manga is canonically a performance acted out by actors, or Tezuka stars. If we the reader are in this story, are we ourselves Tezuka stars? I'll leave that debate up to you. Midori no Hate, Where the Greenery Ends, is actually a special story in SF Fancy Free, alongside a later entry. Where all the others are only 5 pages long, this consists of 3 5-page parts. We see a rocket flying through space containing the last living humans. They land on a planet hoping to find a new home for themselves, and actually find grass. There's oxygen in the air, and when they explore, they seem to be able to find whatever they're looking for. It turns out that the grass is alive, and somehow can read their thoughts and form anything they think of. One of them even imagines their lost love, but the potential danger keeps the other crew members worried. So how does this story end? Well, I'm not gonna say. While I have no problem with spoiling it, I do have issues with spoiling its remake in 1969. I guess that's another way Where the Greenery Ends is a bit special for this collection. Nanoka Mei, the 7th Day, is a bit strange. Also, the translator didn't like it that much, so my description may not be the best. It's got a picture story format. It opens on an inventor and his robot minion in a dome. The robot asks him how this all came to be, and the inventor describes making the dome, the world so to say, in 7 days, paralleling the Bible's creation story. Then the robot tries to create something and ends up making life. Then either that creation or the new life that creation made in turn goes on to, I think, become super dimensional and create their own universe where they make their own world as well as humanity. I'm pretty sure implying they become the Judeo-Christian God. The translation I'm working with is a bit wonky, but I think that's the gist of it. Also, all the images present this as a bad stage play. Isanomushi, the tiny insect, has another fun premise. Bond plays a regular old Earthman when he starts to be haunted, but not by an Earth ghost. An alien ghost whose planet blew up came here for refuge along with his friends. This upsets the Earth ghosts because they're essentially illegal immigrants in their eyes. So the ghosts all hold union meetings and agree for the alien ghosts to call the living members of their race to come pick them up. I just think Earth ghosts and alien ghosts getting into immigration conflicts is a great concept. Gulliver Ryokoki, or Gulliver's Travels, is unique among the collection for being openly inspired by something else. Or at least it's the only one I noticed. An obvious adaptation of the book by Jonathan Swift, Tezuka tells the story of a man returning to Earth only to realize he's become a giant due to space radiation or something. This is similar to a story for the original book, where Gulliver finds an island full of tiny people. Both stories revolve around how Gulliver deals with being a giant, although the details vary between the versions. With Tezuka, he helps win an election, gets his body used as ad space, and helps fend off a hurricane. This is also the other story that's longer than usual, being 2 5-page sections. And to end off SF Fancy Free, we've got Nijiyon Chikan Mai no Otoko ni Kidai, a man from 24 hours ago, originally titled Kino to Ashita no Watashi, Yesterday and Tomorrow's Me. A man survives a train crash, gets some compensation money, and then runs into someone who looks just like him telling him not to spend it. He does, goes home, and finds the man. This is him from 24 hours in the future, dislodged from time because of the accident. Then tomorrow, he runs into himself from the past. An infinite loop has formed of the man, always getting a new copy every day, each one repeating what the other one did 24 hours ago. The later versions of him always have it easier and easier because they can see what's coming up, but eventually the man gets sick of it and decides to kill all the others. He makes a bomb, gets ready to plant it, and then his house explodes. He wasn't the first version, but the second. And now that the him from 24 hours in the future and all the hymns from the past are dead, he vanishes, ceasing to be. And that's SF Fancy Free, a bunch of bite-sized stories. In terms of concepts, I thought these were relatively good. My favorite of course being the tiny insect and there's a finger there. That said, given the short lengths of each of them, we don't really get to explore them to their full extent. Some of these could at least be 20 pages or longer. But I guess, as a small collection of ideas, this was pretty alright. And now we go from a collection of short stories to an individual one. Biru no Nakanome, the eyes in the building, follows a boy newspaper seller working in the corner of a particularly accident-prone road. He also works across from a skyscraper whose windows he likes to look through. But one day, while looking at the skyscraper, he sees something that looks like a ghost. What's the truth of it all? Is the reveal any good? It's alright. Not as great as some of Tezuka's others. They can't all be winners, I guess. But oh, let's get into something a bit more interesting. Some semi-lost media. Ginga Shonen Tai Galaxy Boy Troop was a puppet show. It lasted 92 episodes with Tezuka doing the story and character designs. There was also apparently some limited animation done by Mushi Productions, but let's address what I said before. This show is almost completely gone. Out of its 92 episode run, reportedly only 3 still exist, though I was only able to find 1. Episode 67. But hey, that's more than I found for several live-action shows we previously covered. A small victory is still a victory. From online descriptions, it looks like the show consisted of 3 parts, with parts 2 and 3 having longer episodes than part 1. It also looks like they're divided into different storylines. Part 1 was about the sun rapidly cooling and threatening all life on Earth, so the Galaxy Boy Troop is formed to find a substance to reignite the sun and save everyone. The main character was a guy named Lop, and he befriends a few friendly aliens along the way. What brief mention I could find of part 2 says it's about a battle against aliens, and I don't think I see anything about part 3. Honestly, I was really bummed about not being able to watch this one. Puppets are an underutilized medium. Those Rankin Bass Christmas specials are so charming to me. I also like seeing some of Tezuka's designs transferred to the medium. Look at Puppet Bon and his little mustache. But surprisingly, I did find more about Galaxy Boy Troop from an unexpected source. Its old soundtrack can be found for online auction, and with it comes original illustrations and info. It gives us a look at some scenes from the show, though not with a lot of context. It also gives us some character portraits and descriptions. Altogether, it's not a lot, but it is something. You know, when I started my research for this series, I didn't think I'd be examining an old soundtrack to find info on a lost puppet show. But here we are, I guess. Back to more standard material, we've got another short with Akuma no Oto, The Sound of the Devil. Ken, a criminal for some reason also known as Jack, has been in jail for a few years. During that time, he's been tormented by a sound coming from the loudspeakers and has made friends with a little bird. But one day he gets an idea, and with the help of the bird and another friend, he breaks free. Now that he's out, his goal is to get revenge on the investigator and criminologist who put him in there to begin with. Overall, this was just alright. A little Clockwork Orange-esque, but pretty unremarkable. Tatsumaki go Kokaigi, the voyage of the Tatsumaki, starts with an abandoned ship floating in the sea. When investigated, they find a lone baby, and a fisherman decides to adopt him. Years pass, and the grown-up Shichiro has become a great swimmer, but when the algae they farm starts dying, he swims underwater and finds a hidden submarine. He gets kidnapped, wakes up somewhere else, gets tricked onto a weapon-smuggling boat that he sparks a riot on and takes down, and, long intro short, he becomes friends with recurring swordsman Sasaki Kojiro, and the real story begins. The two of them set out to sea on an adventure, and they find an underwater civilization, which is what the manga is actually about. This is a solid story once it actually gets going. I'm not sure the intro needed to take so long before the core plot happens, but once you get there, you're good. Onto a could not read entry, we've got Goku Ichiji no Kaidan, Ghost Story at 1 PM. Online descriptions say it's about a guy named Sanpei having an unlucky day, and then another, and then another. He's stuck in a time loop repeating the same bad day over and over. Then he goes to commit some crime and a nuclear bomb or something undoes the time loop? Something like that? Maybe it's meant to be an allegory. And back to stuff I could actually read, next is, okay, so its English title is Raygun Jack. In Japanese, however, it's Kosenju, which I guess means ray gun, then Raygun sounded out in Japanese, then Jack. This is how it spells out in the manga's title card, so I guess it's Raygun Jack? I'll shorten it to just one Raygun. Raygun Jack is about an outlaw of the same name, who arrives back on Earth after 3 years of being on the run. He's shocked to find Tokyo has since moved underground due to radiation levels, and this also means he can't go home, since there's no way they let an outlaw like him into the city. He ends up running into a robot family left to monitor the radiation, and starts to live with them. When it's time for the robots to be decommissioned, it's time for Jack to grab his ray gun and protect his new family. A standard story overall, but another alright short. It's better than the next one at least. Bathurst Go Fujo Sezu, the Bathurst does not surface. A ship is sailing the ocean one day, and all of a sudden, they find a thing. A luminescent blob creature makes its way up the ship and attacks the crew. They manage to fend it off and start wondering what it could be. That's when they recall the story of the Bathys, a nuclear sub that vanished here a while ago. Maybe these glowing blobs have something to do with it? And then, out of the fog, a shadow looms. After mysteriously vanishing from the world, the Bathys makes an appearance. It's a pretty good setup so far, some mysteries to be solved, but honestly, this one just fizzles out and feels really anticlimactic. It just needed something more impressive to end on. Klein Notsubo, or the Klein Bottle, is brought to us by Dr. Inko. I don't have the full story to really make sense of it, but it goes a little something like this. A couple keeps having children no matter how much birth control they use. Then they meet a scientist who invented a fourth-dimensional pocket in the form of a Klein bottle. It can be used to store things and is somehow likened to a womb. The wife goes through some kind of surgery, and one day she goes into the Klein bottle herself, and out pop a bunch of children. I'm honestly not entirely sure what happens in this story, but that seems to be the gist of it. But the shorts are over for a moment, as we have an actual series to look at. Introducing Roppu-kun, or young Roppu. The story follows a young boy named Ropei as he dives into the ocean near his house. While down there, he finds a humanoid doll, and pressing the button on his head to turn it on, it comes alive. This doll is Roppu, a toy owned by an alien but abandoned on Earth. It can talk, it can fly, and it can make things. It can make a car, it can make a house, it can make monsters with weird super science. Roppu's advanced alien technology kind of allows him to do whatever he needs to. It is the cause or solution to many adventures. As a manga, Roppu is a collection of mini episodes involving Ropei and Roppu either making something and getting involved in the plot, or getting involved in the plot and solving it by making something. It's very much a boy and his superpowered friend on wacky adventures. Likewise, it's a very surface level series for kids with not a lot to really say about it. There's not a lot of chapters, there's not a lot of depth. It's harmless, but to me it's really not that interesting. I wasn't able to read Oitsubara Reto Otoko, the Quartered Man, but it sounds like a piece of social commentary. A man returns to his country after being away for 10 years, and finds everyone staring at him whenever he does something kind of rude. He eventually gets it explained to him that, years ago, the country had a morality problem, so the higher-ups implanted everyone with a chip that prevents them from doing immoral things. Outraged by this, the man goes to the ethics head office and finds all the higher-ups are having wild parties in order to set the standards for what immorality is. He then destroys all the machines, controlling the chips, and forcing everyone to behave properly. You know, I really feel like I've heard this premise before, but I honestly just can't put my finger on it. Maybe someone else will know? Well, with that, we're almost done with 1963 and gradually nearing the end of the video. So let's go through our favorite roundup section of stuff I don't have a lot on. You know the rules and guidelines by now, so without further ado, starting us off in 1960, we have what appears to be a continuation of Tezuka's manga blank series with manga Sen Ichiya, manga 1001 Nights. As far as I can tell from online descriptions, it's less to do with the classic Arabian tales and features Tezuka getting taken by the professor character to show the behind the scenes of manga creation. It also looks like it has a section about explaining the origins of ghosts and demons. So maybe it's part manga lesson and part educational piece about folklore? I only have a small bit to go on, so it's a little hard to judge. Also in 1960, he drew this cover for the magazine Roku Nensei Karabu, 6th grade club. And that's it for the year. Into 1961, he made something called Bon Shinsaku Makaritoru, Shinsaku Bon Passes By. This looks like a story centered around Bon being a detective, but the details are a little unclear. Some of it seems to look like traditional manga, but then I'm also seeing some live action pages. It may have also been episodic, or intended to be, because its first chapter has its own title, Dead Club. Without the full thing to judge, I'm really not sure what to make of it. Bolshoi Circus is apparently an unpublished work I found in one of his art books. Uchi Circus ga Yatakita, the space circus arrives, are these illustrations of some kind of alien circus. Kaseko to Chikuko, Martian and Earthling, is I'm guessing a picture book? All I've got for it are these images which look like when Tezuka provides art for a story. I don't specifically know what the story is actually about. And then we have Noko Toporo, or Noko Emporo, some kind of story about squirrels. Into 1962, there apparently exists a story called Kase Kaitaku Mora no Oshogatsu, New Year's Day at Mars's Cultivation Village. I'm not seeing any images for it though. Mirai no Kuni, Land of the Future, is this little piece of art here. It looks like Tezuka did a cover illustration for something called Uchu Aesop, or Space Aesop. He also did a cover for Bokuran no Uchu Seifuku, Our Conquest of Space. Kokuma no Boo Boo, Boo Boo the Little Bear, is another work I couldn't read for myself. This time it's about a bear named Boo Boo, who's born tiny and weak. Apparently the manga revolves around him finding something, asking his mom about it, and his mom teaching him. There's something called Shihuyama Egi Imaki, The Legend of Death in Play. From online descriptions, it takes place during the Heian period, but it's also some kind of bomb allegory. Tezuka did the cover art for a book called Gendaiko Saitenho, Grading Modern Kids. From a cursory look, it looks to be something about child education or psychology. Kancho, Korewa Wakusei Jarimasen Shujin Yono, or Captain This Is Not a Planet, It's a Prison, is apparently just this panel, although it is a pretty cool panel. Hon no Chopuri Monogatari, Just a Little Story, is just a little story about a wolf cub who wants to be liked more, so he goes on a journey with a bat and a crocodile. And Tezuka did at least the cover for a book called Niju Ichi Seiki Ino Ryoku Uchuhen, a 21st century trip, the space volume. He might have also done whatever the contents are. Into 63, we've actually got a bit of a mystery work. Time Machine ga Bukawareta, The Time Machine is Broken, has little about it online. It looks like it's a more recently discovered Tezuka work, and it's out there in a special release of the film as live. That's all I could really find about it. Kuruka Kaite Toshijidai, The Age of Undersea Cities is coming, is this 2-page illustration here. I'm seeing reports of, I think, an illustration called Yaho Nasuyama e Iko, or Yay, Let's Go to the Mountains this summer, though I can't find the image in question or any other info about it. And into 1964, there's Nisen Hyaku Roku Juyon Nengetsu Sekai Olympic, or 2164 Lunar World Olympics. Assuming I have all of it, it looks like it's just a 1-page short story about the Olympics in the future. And to finish off the whole section, we have these commemorative postcards for Waseda University. The 1964 Summer Olympics used some of the university's buildings, so Tezuka drew Adam cheering on the athletes. What a fun little note to end the section on. Okay then, back to the stuff I have more to say about, and starting with something a bit more sizable, it's time for Big X. We open on Germany during World War II. Japanese scientist Dr. Asagumo and his son Shigeru are brought in to help develop a Nazi superweapon, the Big X drug. Assisting him is the Nazi scientist Dr. Engel, and right as they're close to finishing it, the Allies invade. The Nazis try to silence the scientists, but Asagumo is ready. He never wanted to develop Big X as a weapon, but as a tool for good, so he hides the formula for Big X as a metal plate in his own son, under the guise of a surgery for appendicitis. In the end, Asagumo is killed, and Shigeru manages to survive. Years pass, and when the adult Shigeru's appendicitis acts up, the metal plate is rediscovered. Unfortunately, the Nazis didn't exactly die out, and they had a feeling the secret to Big X wasn't lost. They extract the plate for themselves with the help of Shigeru's wife, an undercover spy as it turns out, and repivot to their son, Akira. Akira finds the Nazis, winds up captured, and is then made a test subject for the now completed Big X drug. Good thing too, as it grants invulnerability, super strength, and makes you grow. Akira breaks free, retrieves the plate, and after a counterattack by the Nazis results in his dad's death, he becomes the hero Big X. His goal? To prevent the Big X drug from falling into the wrong hands and destroy the Nazis. He hides the drug in an injector disguised as a pen and can inject 5 levels of it into himself for different degrees of increased strength and size. He also has a stretchy rubber outfit along with a helmet that always fits him. These clothes are maybe the most confusing thing in this. I swear they're magic, because they just appear on him even in times when he shouldn't have them. But back to the plot, it turns out that these Nazis are dumb, and they manage to capture Akira on their first try. They take him prisoner and transfer him away to Carthage. It's there he meets his telepathic female partner Nina, and his rival for this series in Hans Engel, grandson of Dr. Engel, who worked with Akira's grandfather Dr. Asagumo to develop the original Big X drug. Hans believes Dr. Asagumo stole the drug for himself and betrayed Dr. Engel, so it's his goal to get it back, believing it's rightfully his. And that's Big X, a pretty well done story about kicking Nazi butt. Or, that is what it's about, until it isn't. So the thing about Big X is that it goes on for too long. Big X fights the Nazis, wins, ends up fighting a completely separate group of Nazis that totally could have just been more of the first group, and then he beats them too. But the manga doesn't actually end there, and we get 3 more small adventures that feel completely unnecessary in my opinion. If anything, the next group of bad guys also feel like discount Nazis, until they get replaced with a giant sentient potato. The point is, Big X is an enjoyable time until around 3/4 of the way. It feels like the story was done by that point, and what came after was just padding. I still came away liking Big X though, but funny enough, Tezuka reportedly didn't. This is strange to me, but Tezuka apparently didn't like it that much because the main character is too much of a hero for justice. Maybe he meant he could have done more with the character, but with all due respect, Tezuka, a lot of your protagonists are standard hero of justice types. I mean, I'm a little bored with them too, but let's not pretend Big X is a special case. For pacing, let's fast forward a bit into 1964 to talk about Big X's anime adaptation. This was actually not made by Mushi Productions, or even Tezuka from the looks of it. Instead, it was handled by Tokyo Movie. This is another case of most of the episodes apparently being lost to time. I myself was only able to find 3. Thankfully, one of those was the first episode, so I could give a little insight about this anime alongside what's been written about it. The base premise seems to be pretty much the same. Big X makes people into super soldiers, it was made by Nazis, Dr. Asagubo hid the metal plate in his son, all that stuff. Then we go forward through time and we start to see some slight changes. Of note, Big X is no longer a drug. I guess the people developing this show didn't want kids playing with toy injectors and stabbing needles into themselves, so they made Big X an electromagnetic wave. Akira just zaps himself now, and the very first time he does, the Big X costume materializes out of thin air. I knew the thing was magic. You know, when you think about it, Akira is effectively waving a magic wand and transforming complete with outfit. I'm not calling him a magical girl, I'm just saying it's very similar. Other than that, online descriptions say episodes are mostly standalone. Big X apparently fights a lot of non-Nazi enemies, Hans Engo is still there as the main rival, and Nina is also there to some capacity. That's basically all I've got. Another series mostly lost, but at least we still have some of it. Back to 1963, what else has been going on in the realm of animation? Well, we've got another Toei movie written by Tezuka. Wan Wan Chushingura, or Doggy March, is a loose adaptation of Chushingura, better known in the West as the Tale of the 47 Ronin. But hold on for a moment. Remember back with Sinbad where Tezuka was brought on to write, but Toei made a lot of script changes that left Tezuka unhappy with the final product? Well, that's reportedly what also happened here. This is a loose adaptation of 47 Ronin. For those who don't know, the 47 Ronin is a popular Japanese story. In short, it's the tale of a lord being punished while the guy who maybe caused the problem got away consequence-free. All the lord's samurai become Ronin, and they hatch a revenge plan to kill the other guy for the sake of loyalty and honor. Doggy March, on the other hand, is about a bunch of woodland animals. Our protagonist is Rock the dog, whose mother Shiro is protector of the forest. She fends off Killer, a local tiger, and his henchman Fox. But one day, she loses that fight and dies, with Rock making his way to the city. There, he befriends a bunch of fellow dogs and grows up to be big and strong. While this is all happening, all the woodland animals are captured and put in a zoo, where Killer still terrorizes them. As you can imagine from the source inspiration, upon hearing this, Rock and the rest of his dog friends decide it's time for some heroic revenge. In reality, the movie doesn't have that much in common with 47 Ronin. There's hints of it still there, but the plot has been pretty simplified. If you're thinking of watching this for the story and characters, I'd set your expectations a bit lower. It's very average. I will say the animation and character designs are pretty nice though. The movie looks good if nothing else. And as a fun fact, this is maybe the first professional animation work of Hayao Miyazaki. It's between this and Wolfboy Ken, as both were made around the same time. I just don't know which one he'd have actually worked on first if you consider production schedules. But, moving on, we have another work brought to us by Dr. Inko, as well as some online summaries. Uchu Kara Otokoga, A Man from Space. The story starts when a spaceship shaped like a cookie pot lands on Earth. Furthermore, the aliens are all apparently very friendly and come in peace. The Prime Minister and all the important politicians get ready to meet the aliens in person, but then it turns out they're all middle-aged women, and all their technology looks like home appliances. They then discover a single male alien, a product of intentional breeding meant to be the ultimate attractive playboy for the females. Worried about the consequences of letting this man loose on Earth, they try to block him off, but then also get an idea. What if they got plastic surgery to look just like this super attractive man? In the end, all the human men end up getting a ton of plastic surgery and the aliens leave. The human women find plugs or something on the men, only to reveal that they're now filled with air and have had so much plastic surgery that they've somehow become blow-up dolls. I'm not sure how that makes any sense, but I guess we shouldn't question weird alien technology. Idainaru Zio, the Great Zio, feels a bit like a return to the Devil Garden from the 1950s. A group of mountaineers gets lost in the mountains and discover a giant robot frozen in ice. They take it up, bring it to the city, and it just so happens to wake up and go on a rampage. Or does it? A misunderstood monster story you could probably guess a little on end. The Great Zio gives us a decent premise, but not a lot of pages to explore it. In the end, it just comes out feeling unremarkable. Yoromeki Dobutsuki, a staggering story of animals, has a bit of an unfitting name in English. This isn't a staggering story, but many. A staggering story of animals is a collection of 2 to 4 page stories, each typically having some connection to animals. Sometimes the animal in question features in the story, other times it's more of a metaphor. The story labeled Skunk, for instance, features a guy who smells, while the story labeled Flea involves a bunch of fleas. It's done in Tezuka's adult gay comic style, and the jokes are more aimed at older audiences. Oh yeah, one of the stories is actually based on Hyotensughi, in a world where masks of him become super popular. Gotta point that one out. Overall, it's nothing great, but it might get a chuckle or two out of you. Waka na wa Hyaka, or My Name is Hyaka, presents us with a company that works their employees to the bone. Our protagonist struggles to meet his quota, but gets astounded by his new co-worker, Hyaka. Not only is he able to meet his quota with ease, but he's very popular with the office ladies. It's then revealed that Hyaka is a prototype robot the company put out to gradually replace all its human workers. But Hyaka, upon seeing the workers' plight, actually becomes their union rep. Hyaka succeeds at giving everyone better working conditions, the company's schemes cause him to die in an explosion, and then all the women who were flirting with Hyaka end up giving birth to tiny atoms. I guess he has robosperm? We've got 2 more short films before the video's up. The first one is Memory, and it's a little hard to describe. Tezuka's on once again for original story, but this time also as animator. Rather than a story, it's more like someone talking about the concept of memories with accompanying visuals. They talk about how memories are formed, misremembered, ones that stick in your mind, etc. All of this with some different styles of animation. At first it's done with these realistic cutouts, but then we switch to something more traditional. I wish they kept the cutout style all the way though, it was kind of unique. I guess you could say the short is neat in an experimental way, but ironically, I don't think Memory was very memorable. Renyu, or Mermaid on the other hand, has a bit more substance. We're introduced to a boy who likes to imagine. One day he's on the beach playing with a fish, but he starts to see it as a beautiful mermaid. They become friends and he even convinces her to come with him, but after he puts her in a tank in his home, all his parents see is the fish. Oh yeah, imagining is also illegal in this country, literally. So the boy is captured and tortured, but still hangs on to the memory of the mermaid. If that sounds a little grim, it's likely the short is some commentary about the youth at the time. Tezuka's back as writer and animator, and I feel he's giving off a clear message this time about encouraging creativity instead of stifling it. Speaking of, the animation this time is also a bit creative. The characters are mostly drawn in outline. It's a unique look. Compared to the other shorts so far, I actually liked Mermaid. It's short, but sweet. And now, as we near the end of the video, we have just 2 more works left to go. One I haven't read, and one I have. Since that's the case, I'm going to do these out of order to end on more of an actual talking point. So, let's talk about the one I wasn't able to read. Rabi-chan Suke e Iku, Little Rabbit Goes to the Moon, brings us back to right around the start of the video. We once again meet our little rabbit friend, but this time he's being bullied by a fox. He develops confidence issues, until he gets a weird offer. The synopsis I'm using might be skimming on the details, but a human comes along and offers Rabbi a ride to the moon, or something like that. Even though he's scared, Rabbi goes into space, eventually finding himself on the moon. He lifts a large rock due to the low gravity, and this gives him his confidence back. You know, thinking about it, I'm not really sure what the lesson would be here. You can be a winner depending on your environment. It kind of just feels like moving the goalposts. But with that, we've come to the last work of the video. It's something a bit more interesting to end on. Hato yo den made, Don't Fly Up to Heaven. Where to start with this one? Well, according to Tezuka, the story was inspired by the book Taro the Dragon Boy by Mayoko Matsutani, based on an old Japanese folktale. It looks like it's just some loose connections though, so I won't go into a full comparison. Besides, the base premise is already going to take a while. Don't Fly Up to Heaven introduces us to a village between 2 mountains. Each mountain is the territory of a powerful yokai, or demon, and their fighting and general dickish nature frequently makes life hard for the village. They also annoy Tachihime, the local waterfall snake deity. But back to the village, there's a husband and wife trying their best to persevere and provide for their 2 kids. To make a long story short, the mother gets kidnapped by a slaver, her husband looks for them, and ends up saving Tachihime the snake. In gratitude, she pretends to be the kidnapped wife to help raise the kids, then one of the mountain yokai that has a crush on her gets jealous, and Tachihime becomes a single parent. Years pass and she raises Hanamaru and Takamaru into strong boys. She even trains them to have super strength and agility. One day, Hanamaru discovers his mom is a snake, and according to the rules of yokai moms or something, that means she must leave. She does give them a cone that can summon her when you break a tooth off though. The two boys decide to take down the local mountain yokai, end up getting their butts kicked, and then they each come to a decision. Takamaru decides to go to the city and become a great warrior, unmatched in power. Meanwhile, Hanamaru thinks power comes in unity and stays to try and unite the village. The two go their separate ways, each with their own ideas of how to beat the mountain yokai, and it's hinted that one day they'll become each other's enemy. That's just the intro to the story. Don't Fly Up to Heaven is a bit of a grand narrative compared to Tezuka's other works by this point. We've got two equal point of view protagonists, and we switch between them every few pages. We also switch formats, as sometimes Don't Fly Up to Heaven is told like a standard manga, and sometimes it's a picture story when it needs to really sell a scene. It really makes this feel like an epic saga at times, and I'd say the story holds up to that feeling. Don't Fly Up to Heaven is really good as we follow Hanamaru and Takamaru through their different struggles. Takamaru meets the selfish but strong Sasaki Daijiro, self-proclaimed great ancestor of Sasaki Kojiro. And I didn't misspeak there, he does claim that one day he'll have a famous descendant, which confuses people. Takamaru then gets involved in this rebel group taking on a corrupt official, and eventually he must decide whether his quest for power is more important than his principles. Hanamaru meanwhile struggles with getting the villagers to not be depressed and apathetic about their bad situation. He then makes friends with the Tanuki and Fox, and goes on his own quest to defeat the mountain yokai. Overall, this was a great read, a classic period piece with a mix of fantasy and a destined feud between brothers. And this is why it really pains me to offer one simple criticism. Don't Fly Up to Heaven in both publication and narrative arcs is split between 3 volumes. The first 2 are good, and the third one drops the ball. I'll avoid spoilers, but I think I could give you an idea. Where the first 2 volumes give us a pretty even split between Hanamaru and Takamaru, Volume 3 is mostly the Hanamaru show, with its new main rival, Sasaki Daijiro, the guy who looked like he was going to be Takamaru's rival. Takamaru barely even does anything near the end, and even then, it's not the best written. Also, for some reason I really don't understand, Tezuka puts in a completely unnecessary sci-fi twist. It barely matters to the story, and you could even say it doesn't at all. It could easily be removed with minor tweaks. But there's a sci-fi twist. Even Tezuka himself admits this may not have been the best in the postscript interview for it. It's just, Don't Fly Up to Heaven was doing so well. Even with its disappointing last third, it's still good overall. If it just focused on the brothers a bit more for the last bit, it really could have been a hidden gem. Oh well, sometimes that's just how it is. With that, we've reached the end of another video. I hope you guys found it a little bit interesting. Consider leaving a comment about your favorite thing you learned. With Tezuka finally getting into animation, it might give us a bit more variety down the line. Though, if you want some real variety, I think the next video is going to start to provide that. When we go into the late 60s, we're going to see Tezuka make some content that isn't exactly child friendly. But that'll have to wait until next time on our journey through the works of Osamu Tezuka.